First, a word about next week. I was contacted by Dave Banger this week, and he is going to have to be out of town next Thursday, so will not be able to speak to the club. But he did indicate he'd like to come on some other date. So, Jim, if one of your monthly program chairs is looking for a program, he would be available. In his place, we will have Dr. Espen Fernandez-Jurusik from the Department of Biological Sciences at Purdue speaking about collisions between birds and airplanes, a topic of great interest to aviation worldwide, and all people that ride on planes. So it's going to be a good one. Our speaker today, Tom Mitchell, has direct oversight of the entire athletics compliance function within the Purdue Athletic Department. He was hired as Director of Compliance in 2010 and was promoted to Assistant Athletics Director in 2013. Before coming to Purdue, Tom served as an Assistant Director for Compliance at Ohio State University beginning in November of 2007. And prior to his stint at Ohio State, he served as the Assistant Director for Compliance at the University of Southern California. Prior to that, Tom worked at the NCAA in membership services through an externship sponsored by the IU Law School. And after law school, he worked in membership services at the NCAA as an assistant coordinator and was responsible for providing interpretations and explanations of NCAA regulations to the general public. And if anybody can figure out all those regulations, this is the man that can do it. And I think he has some interesting information for us today. Tom, welcome to Kiwanis.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Try to do the best I can to explain a 500-page rule book in about 5 minutes. But the thing I think that I always tell all of our coaches and staff and student athletes is that something my mom used to tell me, which is questions are a sign of intelligence. You really have to think about that statement, though. Asking questions doesn't mean you're smart, is what you tell me. Thomas, asking smart questions means you're smart. So there are no dumb questions when it comes to NCAA rules, though, because a lot of the rules have been patched over and built as things happen, as issues pop up. So confusion is unfortunately natural, but does provide some job security. So the overview of what we talked about. So a couple definitions. We'll do hay. Definitions. Kind of trying to break down the recruiting component to it, and then just some permissible ways to get involved, which is a natural kind of sliding from what the restrictions are. So, think of definitions. What is a prospect? The common use term for our world, a recruit, prospective student athlete. It's anybody in 9th grade through 12th grade. Could be a junior college student athlete that we're recruiting, or even a 4-year student athlete that we're recruiting and wants to transfer here. Does not technically include 8th graders, 7th graders, and 6th graders. However, if a school were to do something to recruit them, then that would turn that 8th grader into a prospect. So something such as giving them a benefit that they should not give them is a violation, plus it turns that person into a prospect. So from a practical matter, the way I like to explain it to people is that the way all the recruiting rules are written, and a lot of the rules in the NCAA for that matter, nothing is allowed until it's allowed. Make sense? So a lot of times coaches will say, well, but the rule for phone calls is for 9th graders, for prospects, 9th through 12th graders, and I can't call them until they're a senior. No. The rule is for any individual. So you can't call a freshman and you can't call an 8th grader. Calling 8th graders is a whole other philosophical concern and discussion. But just for these purposes, we'll go through the nuts and bolts and then we'll get into that. Next one, as it relates to this group or outside individuals, representative of athletics interests. Commonly referred to as a booster, but not necessarily. As you can see, it could be someone that went there, an alumni, whether they graduated or not. someone that donates money to the college, someone that purchases season tickets. There's quite a few different ways. The key to remember is that once someone is identified as a booster, they're identified for life. You can't turn on and off that valve, so to speak. As opposed to a prospect, at some point, they could turn into a student athlete once they go to school, report for classes on the first day and they're full-time, or in soccer, volleyball, cross-country, or football, where they start practice before school. When they report to official practice, then they trigger student athlete status. Offers and inducements. So the impermissible thing we were talking about, giving an 8th grader a benefit, or a 9th or 12th grader for that matter. For the student athlete world, we call them extra benefits. But for recruits, it's pretty much the same thing. It's called an offer or an inducement, because the idea is you're giving them something to offer them something to induce them to come to your school. Some of the more famous things you might see if you watch any of the ESPN 30 for 30 movies was the Trans Am that Eric Dickerson got from Texas A&M. Yeah. There's quite a few stories out there. I think for the most part, most people are trying to do the right thing. They're not trying to buy kids. They're not trying to do things wrong. If we see violations, they tend to be honest mistakes, those kinds of things. And usually, the most part, a lot of our donors, our boosters, they call me, call our John Purdue Club and ask, is this something we can do? There's exceptions. There's lots of exceptions. One of them might be if there's a pre-existing relationship. So if let's say your best friend growing up, and they've got a son or daughter who turns out to be pretty darn good at a sport, and you've gone on vacations together, and you swap Christmas presents here and there, that can all continue, even as they're a prospect, and even as they become a student athlete. These rules are put in place to prevent the Trans Am. The big gift was like, wow, we don't know these people, and they gave me a car, or a bunch of shoes, or a bunch of money, or they promised my mom a job if I went to school far away, and then she could move and come into the community. It's that kind of stuff. And a lot of these rules were promulgated in the late 1940s, early 1950s, when there was a lot of colleges that had like Letterman clubs, basically booster clubs that went around and bought things for recruits. So the idea behind it was, Big Ten schools, we could afford it, but smaller schools could not. They didn't have the alumni base, they didn't have the money support, so in the idea of competitive equity, they tried to put a cap on it. But like everything in America, if you try to suppress something, there's always a black market where stuff pops up. So, now let's get into like the actual recruiting things that can go on, from our standpoint, what we do with recruits. There's two different types of campus visits. The first one is for senior year, or depending on the time period when it is. This will be kind of a theme as we go through. The rules are not the same for every sport. They are different for every single sport. And if we're recruiting a kid that's in multiple sports, like we have a young man right now, whose father played basketball for us a few years back. And he is a wrestler, a thrower in track and field, and a football player. So he was lots of fun in recruiting and educating those three coaching staffs to try to figure out how the rules work, because there's certain things that one coaching staff could do and another coaching staff could not do. Yeah, which made it interesting. But for the most part, you're looking at, as a recruit, as a high school senior, I can take 5 official visits, 1 per school, and those visits, they pay for my airfare, my hotel for 48 hours, meals, that kind of thing. Complimentary admissions, comp tickets to home athletic events. Unofficial visits, that's where the kids pay. The parents, grandparents, legal guardians, they pay for the expenses to drive to school, maybe they stay in a hotel, that kind of a thing. We can still give them tickets though. Either group can get tickets, it's not an issue, but we can't buy them food, we can't give them drinks, so then you run into some of those issues too. But just as a kind of a snapshot of what are some of those differences, this is all official visit rules. We're looking at men's basketball, football, and then all other sports. So in meals, in men's basketball, we can do, parents, legal guardians, and spouse, and the prospect. In football, we can do prospect and up to 4 family members. So we could do little brother, little sister in football, but not for basketball. Yeah, good times, right? Fun for me to monitor. Some of this is because we're testing the waters. Football decided to try to test that and see, because from a practical matter, a lot of times that's what happens. People can't find a babysitter to leave their smaller, younger children behind for 3 days. So, there's not any extra room. If there's no extra charge for staying in the same hotel room, well, let's bring them on the visit. And then, then there's not an awkwardness. Because I've had a lot of coaches at all the schools I've been at say, well, it just gets awkward. You pay the bill at the end. It's like, well, can we get a separate bill for the kid chicken fingers meal? Really? Do we need to do that? So they kind of tested that one. And then if you look at the flights, basketball's testing that one. So it's kind of odd. You'd think that one sport would have tested both at the same time, but that's not what happened. Because the coaches associations for both those sports pushed forward those ideas. They could have pushed forward both ideas, but they chose not to. So I'm left to explain it, interpret it, and then share it with our coaches so they know what to do with it. It's like speaking 5 languages, yeah. It's good stuff. I like it. It's problem solving, so it doesn't bother me, but it is hard on coaches and on parents and recruits to know what's going on, because they might think one school's telling them a lie and the other school's telling them something else, and it's actually not that at all. They're a 2-sport athlete. And one sport say, yeah, we pay for your flights. Well, the other school couldn't. Well, it's because they're bringing you in as a football recruit versus basketball. So, comp tickets. Again, I've got 2 slides on this one, but the nuts and bolts, the thing to remember is they can get 3 for the most part. 3 meaning 1 for themselves and 2 for a guest. Now, if they have a non-traditional family, maybe mom and dad are divorced, remarried, or maybe the grandparents are in the home and are active participants, we can do non-traditional, meaning we can get another 2 tickets. In football, they have a new thing where they can just get 2 more, period. So again, going back to that previous slide with little brother, little sister coming along, now we can feed them a meal, they should be able to get a ticket too. So what I think you're going to see for us is in basketball, both basketballs, not just men. Right now that rule is only men. But you'll see the men's and women's in football, they will switch to being this comp rule for tickets, flights, and meals, which makes sense. If the school wants to pay for that, then let them. It is what it is. A lot of these restrictions are put in place to keep costs down. But as we see these things increase, the counterbalance to keep the cost down is going to be right now in football, they can take 56 visits a year. They can bring 56 kids to campus, which is a lot. And I've never been in a school in the 10 years I've done this where we've done that. It's just a lot. And you can actually roll over 6 from the previous year. So in theory, you could have 62. So one of the thoughts that people would propose was, okay, let's do more for flights, let's do more for tickets, let's do more for meals. Let's let the kids only take 4 visits. Most of them don't take 5 visits, and if they do take 5, they're just going on vacations. They're not even going to go to those schools. They're just going on a fun trip. Let's make it important. Let's make it matter. Let's go to 4 for the kids. And then for us, maybe instead of 56, we go to 40, 45. For us, at Purdue, we've been averaging between 30 to 40, maybe on 45 one year on the high side, which is normal. That's not unreasonable at all. So that's just football. Yeah, we do a lot more than that. Swimming, lots. Big rosters. Anytime you like track, lots. Anytime you got a big roster. So, and then again, for unofficial visits, same thing. With both sets of visits, both tickets, the big thing for us is they have to be on a pass list, so they can't get hard tickets. And then they can't sit in special seating, so they can't be on the sideline. So you might see me at home football games trolling the sideline, making sure they're off the sideline. They can be in the stands, they can't be in the suites, they can't be in the sidelines. Mackey's a little easier. Just gotta keep them out of the padded seats. It's not that hard. And really, there's not a bad seat. So, telephone calls, again, more fun, lots of trickiness, different rules for everybody. From a practical matter, if it's initiated by the prospect, they can call at any time. An 8th grader can call a college coach. A 10th grader, 12th grader, doesn't matter. The coach is going to be restricted. The coach is restricted based upon the legislation that applies to them. And as you can see, basketball, June 15th, sophomore year, it's unlimited, but in football, they don't have that rule. they can make one call for a junior in the month of April, May. And then nothing until September 1st of senior year. So if you're recruiting a kid that's a dual sport, their basketball coaches might be, burning the phone.
You can only call it a call if they actually get the kid on the phone.
Correct.
If they call, the kid's not there, that doesn't count yet.
Maybe. So the question was, if they only get the kid on the phone call, can it be accountable call, or what if they leave a message? If they just leave a real message, like honestly, please tell Tim I called. Not accountable call, totally fine. If they leave a really long message, or they talk to mom, and they pitch it to mom, that counts. Now if they talk to mom, and they say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be back a couple hours, I'll give you a call then, that's not countable. But what they have to do on our end is they document those calls. The bigger problem is dropped calls. They drop a call and then they call back. If they document it, it's okay. If they don't, problem. This is why a lot of sports have gone unlimited phone calls. So right now there's only, for us, just 3. Swinging, diving, track and field, and football that actually have restrictions on it. Because from a practical matter, recruiting is like dating. I mean, it is. Like, the people that want to talk all the time, they get together. They're on the phone all the time. The people that are like, you don't need to call me. I'm good. I committed. Trust me. We're good. They don't want to be called all the time. And the thing that we're paying attention to, and I say we, meaning the entire membership, is in sports that have the unlimited in the next 7 years, as those classes start to get enrolled in school, do they stay enrolled? Are we going to see less transfers because people get to know each other a lot better? You get to really understand, well, this kid just doesn't like to talk. I'm a talker, or I'm kind of an introvert. Like, I don't need you calling me 25 times a day. Like, I am an introvert. I have learned to be extroverted in situations such as these, but if I was back in high school and there was a coach calling me more than once a week, I would not be going to their school. If I said I'm going there, then we're done. You don't have to worry about it. So everybody's going to be different. And I think what we'll see is you'll see more happy people at the schools because they'll get a better sense of what's really going on, what that coach is really like, what the staff's really like. And conversely, the coaches will too. They'll find out a little bit more about the kid, how they interact, how they don't want to interact, how to reach them. So this one's paired with the previous one. This is emails and texting. So emails have always been permissible up to a certain point before, you couldn't do it until September 1st junior year. Texting was a new thing. My very first day in this entire business, back in 2004, I was an intern, I didn't know what was going on. I had all 3 divisions because there's 3 manuals for all 3 divisions. So having to know one division is much easier than when I was at the NCAA and I had to learn 3. The first thing that we debated in an interpretation meeting was, what is a text message? This is 2004, mind you. Is it a phone call or is it an email? It was an hour-and-a-half debate with no resolution. Hour and a half. I go back to my boss's office, who's now in Nebraska, Omaha, and he's still a mentor and a great friend. And I sat down, and he's just kind of smiling, and he's like, not saying anything. I'm not saying anything. I just have this look on my face. He goes, you want to ask something? I think I know what you want to ask. I'm like, what's that? Did we really just argue for an hour and a half about, because I couldn't talk to Ninja. I just have to sit and watch this thing unfold. He said, the problem is that at that time, we have 2 rules. We have a rule for emails, we have a rule for phone calls. We don't have a rule for texts. There's no rule for it. So we got to stick it in one of the boxes. Fast forward 7 years later, we come up with something for it. We make a rule for it. Fast forward 2 years after that, basketball says, our kids don't want to call. They don't want to talk on the phone. I see them on social media, and I know it's on their phone. I know they have their phone in their hand. I use my one call, and he doesn't pick up. And then he texts me back, what's up, coach? And I can't text him. What am I supposed to do? So basketball switched to this rule first, and they loved it. And then women's basketball the following year. And then just this past year, everyone else, except for cross country, swimming, diving, and football. Noticing a pattern here. The coaches associations for all of these sports have to support these ideas. Otherwise, it's not going to go through. Which then leads to general mass confusion for most recruits and the general public. So Off-campus contacts, much cleaner. It's much easier. There are lots of other little odd restrictions. Like there's a rule that says that during the winter contact period or certain contact periods, football head coaches cannot go out. The reason that was happening was that one of the coaches I used to work for at Southern Cal, Pete Carroll, used to go into high schools and it would turn into a circus. And essentially the school would basically shut down for an hour. So the thought was, well, let's send the assistants because most people don't know who they are anyway. And then they can go talk to the high school coach. They can maybe meet with a senior in high school. They can do the things they need to do, meet with the guidance counselor, get copies of transcripts, and then get out. And it won't be Ringling Brothers. Most sports don't have it. That's just a football restriction. Most of them, it's just a figuring of when is it first permissible to actually meet with them face-to-face. Face-to-face contact. Evals are okay at any time. An eval is just watching a game. So a coach can watch an 8th grader, they can watch a senior in high school play a basketball game. Doesn't matter. But a face-to-face meeting is only permissible after the dates for those particular sports. And there is a limit in each sport of how many times they can have that contact with that kid. How many times they can evaluate that kid. The idea being 2 things. 1, putting a little protection in place for the recruit and their family. And 2, putting a little protection in place for the coach from themselves. Something we did this 2 years ago, we added for football was a dead period, which is a no off-campus, no on-campus recruiting. They can do emails, they can do calls, that's it. And it's right around Christmas time, and coaches love it. They're guaranteed home. Yeah, bowl games, but also Christmas time, because some of the bowl games aren't even going on when it's happening. Right. But it's great because they don't have to worry. Whether you're in the bowl game or not, it's not a problem. In-home visits are these, only permissible during this time.
Two questions. First off, why don't they just standardize it? Second question, do you think, well, basketball has an early signing period. Do you see that coming for football?
Second question first. There will be an early signing period for football. It will probably match up with the junior college signing period, which is just a little earlier in December. So you'll probably see 2 signing periods in football. So one will be in mid to late December, the other one will stay in February.
Good thing or bad thing?
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a very good thing. Why it's not standardized? Because coaches are different and sports are different. I mean, honestly, and it is very different. I mean, for swimming, and this isn't just here, like everywhere, they will have 20 to 30 kids on a visit, on an official visit. They're recruiting heavily in their senior year for swimming because they don't know how fast they are until they're seniors. A lot of stuff changes. And when they do those 30 kids on an official visit, they don't bring parents. They do it cheap. They maximize it. They don't do nicer dinners. They do really low budget stuff. And they spend a lot of time with the potential teammates, a lot of time with the student athletes. Every sport's different in how they approach it. So, and for years people wanted it standardized, and it was more standardized. When I started, there was very little variance. I don't care if it's not standardized. I mean, really the biggest burden's on me. Like a lot of compliance people were concerned about that because I don't like change. Why do we care? I mean, if it's better for the kids, it's better for the sport, it's better for the coaches and work-life balance, then why do we care? Social media rules for recruiting. I mean, the simple thing to remember here that I tell our coaches is if you can follow them, you can follow them at any time on Twitter, Facebook, what have you. The bigger key is the communication that you do with them needs to be private, and if it's private, then it needs to follow the email restrictions. If it's public, you can't do it, unless they've signed with us. If they sign a national letter of intent, and we do our publicity releases, then coaches can openly talk to them back and forth. Ways to get involved, I mean, honestly, following and supporting us on social media and in the game. I mean, buying tickets and being good fans. You'd be surprised at how powerful that is. And so many people say that, but I don't know if people really believe it. But I've been in enough schools and seen enough arenas, and I've seen some packed ones, and I've seen some not packed ones. And when we bring kids on campus, it matters. It absolutely matters if there's people in there and they're cheering and it's going well. Even if we lose the game, if the crowd's into it and the team played hard, it matters. And one of our coaches said, we can spend it any way you want. If we lose the game, you go back to that recruit and say, hey, you see that? we definitely need you for next year. Versus, yeah, we beat this team handily. You can be a part of this. I mean, they're great salesmen. And salesmen, they can pitch it any way they want, but they can't if the arenas are empty, or if the sport's not good, or if fans are negative. Those are things that's like, if I had the magic wand, everyone's like, what would you change? Like, I would change that. I'd find some easy way to communicate with all the supporters and fans, say, look, be positive. Being negative never got anything good done. So, any questions?
High schools now have these club sports, both in basketball, volleyball, girls and boys, where families travel all over the United States to meet coaches. How does that affect that?
It's a big thing. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, quite honestly.
They say coaches don't travel to high schools anymore.
Depends on the sport. Again, the rules are tough because in softball, volleyball, soccer, it's club recruiting, it's recruiting at an early age. But good coaches will still talk to and follow up with those high school coaches. You do your homework, try to figure out what kind of kid they are, what kind of family they come from. Are they the right fit for your school? They might be a great player, but they just might not be the right fit. It doesn't mean they're a bad person.
Oh, I understand it, but I was just concerned because you hear so much of it now.
Yeah, it's a big part of what we have to battle.
How do all the summer sports camps interfere or interact with recruiting regulations?
Well, there's some loosening of the recruiting regulations in that regard. Camps are a funny thing because I think for a long time people said that it's not recruiting. It's totally recruiting. So the NCAA loosened up one of the rules a couple years back where now coaches can have recruiting conversations during a camp. So if a coach really likes the kid, they can pull him aside and say, hey, I'd like to offer you a scholarship. So that's why you might see an 8th grader getting offered or a 10th grader. How are they getting offered? How the coach can't call them? That might be one way. But conversely, then they send out an intern, just this last week, that said we can't do tours as part of camp. We can't do a recruiting tour. Now, if it's a camp tour, this is where the facilities are, that you'll be working in, this is where the dorms are, you'll be staying, that's totally fine. And that's always been fine. But we can't, on top of that, say, let me take you over to the Neil Armstrong building. Unless there's a particular reason that they need to be there for camp. So it's one of those things where they give us one thing, and then they take something else away. It leaves everybody scratching their heads going, we can talk to them, we can offer them, but we can't just give them a tour. Why does that matter? If you throw out the NCAA rulebook for a second and take it as a rec sports camp, I would bet that they want to take them on a tour of campus to showcase campus, because that is the point of camps, is to show young people this is what we have to offer here as an institution. So, again, if I was king for a day.
How many scholarships can they offer? Is there a limit?
There's not a limit to the number of verbals that they can offer, but in the Big Ten Conference, we actually do limit in basketball, football, and baseball, the amount that we can physically offer. The number that we can actually mail out has to match what we have available for next year. And there's limits within that limit as well in football.
Cleaning isn't legal. Preening,
What's that?
Tom Crean in Indiana, recruiting
Oh.
17.
Yeah, so the Big Ten rule in basketball is you can do 2 more than what you have on the books, but you have to file a little form with them and basically have an internal discussion to say, we think we're going to do this because, let's say, 2 of our current guys might leave for the draft, or aren't doing so well academically, won't make it, or have asked privately to transfer, and they're probably going to be gone. The idea of it in our conference is we don't want people getting oversigned and pushed out. That's the whole point behind it. I think you should stick with the kids you brought.
How many official visits do we pay for in a year for all sports?
Between 130 and 150. But think about that. Peyton Truitt, he signed with us for football. He's from West Lafayette High School. His transportation cost was pretty low. Honestly, I'd have to go back and look at his paperwork to see if he even got mileage. But he could, you know, he really could. I mean, I know Danny Anthrop, he was the same. He did an official visit, but, you know, and we put him up in a hotel room. I know for Danny, I can't remember, but, you know, because it's part of the experience, you know. When those visits come, there's usually 8 to 12 guys that come in one time, so, you know, you want them to bond. It's also a chance when we get to know each other. It's like, okay, you guys are going to probably be teammates, you verbal, you're going to sign tenders in about a month. Why don't we get to know each other? You know? And some of them, they're coming from far away. So we'll try to stack them up if we can. If I remember right, like, you know, we could have the quarterback and some of the receivers in the same visit, because those guys better get along.
Thank you very much. I don't envy anyone involved in collegiate athletics and trying to keep track of everything, all the regulations. But Tom, as a souvenir of your visit here, here's a Kiwanis flashlight that you can use to peruse the 500-page rule book.
One of my nightstands.
Thank you. See you all next week.